Welcome back. You're watching a Sunday edition. We're on to our last segment. Before we wrap it up at the top of the hour, we take a look at how prepared the IEBC is to conduct the elections, as well as the campaign trail getting heated, really. The political temperatures getting heated as we head to the general election today. NASA is in Nyanza and Jubilee is at the coast. We'll be discussing that. My panel still very intact here. But the IEBC, the KPMG, the audit firm that audited our voter lists, has raised a number of concerns on the biometric identification, saying this should be a priority, but says that there are a number of loopholes that if the IEBC is not careful will throw this election into a disarray. I will start with you, Husband. What do you think about these concerns raised by KPMG?
I think an audit in itself is supposed to raise exceptions, and we expected that KPMG was going to point out the exceptions in the voter register and the electoral process. And to the extent that they did that, we commend them for doing that. But I want to say that IBC should also be commended. Because these loopholes that people are talking about, I think Kenyans have just been very creative in what they want to look at as loopholes. Because IBC actually came out in a press conference and gave Kenyans a brief of what KPMG pointed out as these loopholes. And they've been broken down into 8, I mean, security, a number of Kenyans, like around 25,000 Kenyans who cannot be traced through biometric, identification. And, compared to the 19 million Kenyans, that's a number that I think IBC can deal with. Now, IBC came up with 8 things that they're going to do. And at the top of it is stakeholder engagement. And it is important to understand that to the extent that they're going to engage people as a top priority on what was raised and how they're going to go about it. Because at number 8, what they're saying is a plan on how to deal with all this after involving every other interested party in this process. So I want to believe that this is a process that KPMG has done so well, but the crux of the whole thing now is on IEBC. And how they've started is kind of impressive. In terms of preparedness, if they go through the 8 steps that they've picked, I think we'll have a very efficient electoral process. In terms of IEBC preparedness, I would say that apart from the presidential ballot paper court case, it is not IEBC that doesn't look prepared. It is the political players. If you look at what they've done, they've broken down everything, including the polling stations, the number of registered voters in each polling station, and they've gone a step further and made it even a lot more efficient by saying that all the polling stations will be capped at 700 voters. In which case, if all Kenyans woke up very early to go and vote, we'll be done with the voting at a fairly.
So for you, the IBC is
they're doing a fantastic job.
Do you agree?
Yes, I do, and not because of anything. First, it's considering everything. No, they're independent. It is for political convenience. They like referring to IEBC as Jubilee aligned, but the truth of the matter is that it is just that. It is Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission. First, considering that they came into office just the other day, and considering the honesty with which and the openness with which they've been conducting their business, I think it's commendable. Part of what my fellow panelists have said is part of what I'm saying, the openness and the transparency that, okay, this is what KPMG came up with as possible loopholes. This is what we are suggesting as mitigation against those possible loopholes, so that that by itself is commendable. This kind of openness was lacking before, but as the kind of approach that IEBC is adopting in making sure that everything is known to the public, even the challenges, even the buts that are being posed about how they're doing their job, they are communicating them and actually giving the public information as to how they are planning to go about dealing with those shortcomings that are being pointed out by such professional bodies as the KPMG. That is by itself commendable, because initially, what used to happen is that there are things that were almost taboo in discussing. And the picture of that all is well is what most of the other previous commissions wanted to paint. But I love the fact that this commission is not pretending about anything. When issues are raised, they actually agree that yes, these issues exist, and we are aware, and we actually on top of things, and this is what and how we are suggesting to deal with those issues. So for that, I think we have to commend them for the work they are doing. Like I said, considering the constraints, considering that they just came the other day, and that they had a very short time to the election. You have to commend them for what they've been doing so far. I think, of course, we still, at the end of the day, this will be determined by how we conduct the actual election. So that, because anyone can say that this is PR, and actually they will be right if on the D-Day everything crashes, and then we are back to the Kienyeji way of, and then everybody will be justified to have said that actually whatever they took us through was just PR. But I am hoping it is not. I am hoping that and I actually would want to try, as someone who has been urging Kenyans to have more confidence and trust in the institutions, I would want to take them for their word, but of course tell them that what will determine how we look at how they perform this thing is how they conduct the actual election and how they transmit
this must looks like he has different views from what
he always has different ones.
I don't have different views, I've got divergent views and informed by facts. Number one, to give KPMG the opportunity of reviewing that register was a huge mistake. Because we know we made a mistake when we said we are going to audit the voters register. We assumed that it's auditors. And the conventional understanding of auditors in Kenya are accountants. That's KPMG, PwC. So we gave KPMG the opportunity. And when they audited the voters register, they gave recommendations. And they told us what a normal Kenyan would actually know. That in Kenya today, we don't know how many people are being born today, and we don't know how many people are going to die today. We don't have those records. Or rather, let me just review that. We don't know how many people were born yesterday and how many people died yesterday. So we don't have those records in place. So when KPMG was undertaking the assignment, they did not get requisite cooperation from the government agencies responsible for registration of births, responsible for the registration of deaths. And in one of the recommendations, they said they actually do not know the number of dead voters in that list. They don't know the number of deceased persons in that list. So they just came up with an estimation that anybody would have done. And even the amount of money they were doing, if you speak to IT experts, they would say they would have done the job more effectively at even 5%. So the primary responsibility for KPMG was to tell us how many deceased persons are in that register. That one was not delivered. So the only comfort we have is that the KIMS technology, the biometric voter verification, is going to be a huge success. So that the NASA claims that we have dead voters waiting to resurrect and cast their ballots does not occur. Number two, IEBC has got huge challenges in communications. And the commissioners need to understand that their responsibility, up to 75% is PR or communications, telling us that they have come up with predictable systems for unpredictable outcomes. For me, it's surprising that the only person I see doing TV shows is Dr. Kombe and Chebukati. 2 commissioners, and I understand they're supposed to be 6. So where are the rest of the commissioners? Even the commissioner responsible for IT infrastructure, I've not seen him come out and tell us we now have a bulletproof system that we are not going to have clever guys like the guys from Russia coming to compromise, to hack into the system. That is one of the recommendations by KPMG, that they've got, I don't know, 2 super administrators who got access to that register. So there's a chance that when you have 2 guys and you do not know where the responsibility stops, somebody can easily compromise that system. So again, IEBC has not come out effectively to tell us this is what is happening. And then number 3, I don't know why IEBC keeps on getting nervous when somebody goes to court. When you go to the court or high court, it's because, you know, NASA wants clarification on a number of issues. And
they've said they also need clarification on those issues.
Yeah, because even them now, they have a criminal responsibility. If you are a returning officer, you are at the secretariat or a commissioner, if by either error of omission or commission something goes wrong, it's you is going to take a responsibility. So for us, we don't want to say that IEBC has covered good ground, that we are reasonably happy, that there is a reasonable chance of a credible election. For them, the success rate is 100%. Because if the success rate is not 100%, with what we have been told about the hotspots in Kenya, polarization, it's very easy for us to plunge into chaos. But something that IEBC has not told us is the commercial catchfights within the commission. There are a number of politicians, in as much as they know we are going to the elections, for them the interest is not elections. For them, their priority is to make a quick buck. And the IEBC has not told us whether they've been able to immunize themselves from these cartels. Because all these issues you hear about Al Ghurair, I mean, does it not bother anybody that Al Ghurair has been on this for the last 1 year? They keep, I mean, a judge of the High Court says, I've got issues with this guy. The IEBC cartels get a loophole, they give them a contract, then you go back to another judicial body. I mean, what is this thing about Al Ghurair that is sophisticated? Are they the only people capable of printing these ballot papers? These are some of the issues that IEBC needs to communicate to us for them to give us confidence that in fact they're going to be a fair referee.
All right, let's take a look at the campaign trail and some of the very interesting things that came out as NASA was in Nairobi and Jubilee was in Kisumu.
Au namna gani jamani? Hapa Kisumu Jubilee tunakura. Tunakura hapa Kisumu. Msinichezee nyinyi jamani, msinichezee jamani. Kunaye kura ya Jubilee hapa. Hebu nione kwa mikono ni wangapi wanasema kunaye. Tumekuja siku ya leo. Na mnakumbuka wakati tulikuwa hapa juzi niliwaambia nitarudi, si ni kweli? Si ni kweli? Na tuliwaambia ya kwamba nia yetu ni kuona ni kwa njia gani tutaweza kufufua viwanda vyetu. Na nakumbuka mliniambia ya kwamba shida kubwa ni kazi, si ni kweli? Nataka kushukuru hawa wenzetu wa Kenya Breweries ambao wameamua kuweka katika hii factory hii shilingi bilioni 15 kufufua hii kiwanda. Hii kiwanda ikimalizika itaandika na itaajiri vijana wa hapa Kisumu zaidi ya 1500 watapata kibarua hapa. Siri namna hiyo. Alafu sasa pia zaidi ya wakulima wa sorghum na muhogo.
Also, President Uhuru Kenyatta was selling the message of employment and revived industries in Kisumu while campaigning last week. Let's see what the NASA principals had for residents in Nairobi during their campaign trail.
Vijana mnaenda kama nyumba kutoa hao watu na kupeleka kwa kituo. Sasa hata wagonjwa Kidero atatoa ambulance kutoa huko hospitali na kupeleka ndani. Sasa
zote tuwe tayari kupiga na kura hapa. Kama uko na kura yako Nairobi, usihamie nyumbani. Tunajua Jubilee tayari wamesense defeat na wanatumia kila namna. Usiuze vile kitambulisho chako.
Siku hii hakuna kulala. Sasa mnakesha mpaka alfajiri, sio? Alfajiri kifika tutaanza safari. Sasa manake kule Canaan.
So voter turnout in Nairobi, residents there in Nairobi being told there's no sleeping. Kesha usiku mzima, in the morning, wake up, go to the polling station. Kalonzo Musyoka says, do not sell your IDs. And seemingly something that comes out of that for the NASA people is turn out in large numbers and vote. This has been one of the problems they've encountered in past elections as far as voter turnout is concerned.
Okay, yesterday I witnessed, or rather I saw a media conference done by Wavinya Ndeti, and she made some statements that would be of interest to any voter in Machakos. That the Governor Mutua is actually giving out people loans and understand you're supposed to surrender your ID or something like that. That could be a strategy for voter suppression. And it's important for every Kenyan to know that you do not need to give away your documents. Whether it's an ID, whether it's a voter's card, you retain your documents so that when you you go and cast your ballot. You shouldn't be, nobody should intimidate you. And then, of course, for NASA, they know that what is going to work for them is a turnout. Because if their base doesn't take the initiative to wake up on the voting day, then Raila Odinga is going to get a very serious beating. And you know, Raila now is becoming emotional. He's asking supporters to refrain from so many things, so that on the material day they actually come out and vote. And his
no
message,
distraction on the material day. No distractions whatsoever.
You even recall, as Esmond has indicated, that he follows soccer. Soccer players are restrained from enjoying so many things when they're going to have a serious match. So I think that's what Raila is telling them. But if you follow his messaging the last couple of days, he's beginning to associate himself with pleasure that Kenyans are looking for, and positioning President Kenyatta as pain. Because he's asking people, between the two of us, who represents your aspirations as an individual? And he's becoming very emotional. And maybe at this stage, Kavemba would be happy to know that the development agenda is not going to be selling anymore. For instance, when you go to Kisumu and you say that now we are going to have a Kenya breweries, we are going to create jobs for you, that's a private sector initiative. They are going to get these jobs in the next 2 years. So the question is, from the time you took office 4.5 years ago or 5 years ago, what have you done to address the issue of unemployment?
So you don't
in
think that
part
would
of the
work?
world?
The reviving of like the goodies that President Uhuru Kenyatta is taking to these places that are not perceived to be very welcoming to him, you don't think that will work?
Well, you know, you've been given 5 years to prove that you can deliver on your promises. And many Kenyans are agreed, including a number of Jubilee strategies, that is not delivered. Like, for instance, 5 years ago, he promised the nation double-digit growth. Is not delivered. So how would a guy in Kisumu now believe that if you give you another 5 years, you're going to create employment opportunities? And when you're having an organization like KBL opening another plant, the marginal increase in employment opportunities is bare minimum. Because lately, you know, everything is digital, everything is automated. That entire plant in Kisumu can run with probably only 10 guys. So the president, on his scorecard that Kavemba says he gave during the manifesto launch, has not convinced many Kenyans that he's actually delivered on his word. On the issues of food security, if you're looking for unga today, you are not going to get it anywhere. He said he's going to have zero tolerance to corruption. Chapter 6 was watered down. The Leadership and Integrity Act doesn't seem to hold. There are so many people who are accused of having participated in corruption. And now the conversation in the streets that President Kenyatta has been a huge success in empowering family and friends, but not the common man. The common man in the village, in the streets right now is yawning. He's looking for somebody to give him a message of hope. And I say this with a lot of confidence, because during the 2007 campaign, when President Kibaki went out with the agenda that the economy is growing, when he told people the economy is growing, people were yawning, people were rolling their eyes, saying the only people who appreciate that the economy is grown are your family and friends. But for the common man, I have not felt that impact in my pockets. So people are beginning to see between Raila and Kenyatta, who best represents their selfish interest. And I think that is what both the President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga need to address in their campaign.
Has one for you, President Uhuru Kenyatta giving out goodies in these areas, but the opposition is largely on voter turnout.
I think the opposition is well poised to capitalize on voter turnout, because that is the clincher for them, that they have 95% and above voter turnout in their strongholds. They are likely to win this election. And for them, I mean, it's not a question of, because Kenyans are not conditioned to listen to issues. It's a question of how are you going to serve our interest. And I think that is what NASA is riding on, that they're telling people this is the extent to which we are going to protect your interest. When they go to different regions, they identify those interests and just say that a NASA government to protect your interests in this way, but for us to get to a point where we are protecting your interests, we must win the election, and for us to win the election, you guys must turn out and vote. And you would understand that. I think to that extent, you give NASA credit for responding to people on the ground in these political rallies and not dwelling so much on billboards and all that. But again, you look at President Uhuru Kenyatta and his forays in Luo, Nyanza, Kisumu, for instance, and you understand that he's also doing that because it's not like all is lost. We are not living in the Kenya that we were living in 20 years ago, where we were so tribal. Right now, I think there is a demographic that is a lot more conscious. And there is a sense in which the political class, especially the Jubilee campaign team, has realized that there is dissatisfaction among Kenyans. You know, there are Kenyans who are dissatisfied with the government, and there are also Kenyans who are dissatisfied with the opposition. There are some who are even tired that, you know, would rather be in government. Whether we have a big stake or a small stake, would just rather be in government. And there is a sense in which the Jubilee campaign team is capitalizing on that. That are there people in these opposition strongholds who are tired of being in the opposition? And is there a way we can get these people to vote for us? Is there anything we can capitalize on? And I think it was a big thing for President Uhuru to capitalize on the 15 billion investment by IEBC. My ancestral home where my grandfather was buried, people grow sorghum. And you see, the proximity to Kisumu basically tells them that, you know, with an IEBC plant, chances are this sorghum will not just be food, that it could be a raw material, you know, for this industry that is being set up in Kisumu. So to that extent, I think, and you see, you look at the way Uhuru was asking for votes. He actually knew that this is a predominantly Raila zone, and he was asking in a very amiable way, mtatupatia kura kweli, you see. And then he went back and told them that, you know, irrespective of where you are and who you support, we are actually conscious of your needs. You need jobs. EABL will give you jobs. You need, and you see the bigger picture here is that with that investment, there is a way in which the company will pay tax, which will bring into the state coffers. There is a way in which it will create employment. And of course, in each and every budget, we realize that the taxation on luxury goods like alcohol basically boosts our revenues, you know. So if that is articulated, and I like what Jubilee is doing in the sense that after Uhuru's campaign, there is a sense in which Kenyans think that he's done. No, he leaves people on the ground to now look for votes from door to door. So the extent to which NASA is going to mitigate that will determine whether Uhuru will get more votes or less votes in this opposition stronghold.
Jindal, have you get the last words on the campaign trail this previous week?
I would want, there's something that I picked from Nairobi. You know, Nairobi, NASA has a very big challenge in Nairobi, only that they're trying to really play it down. The truth of the matter is that in Nairobi, NASA is only in existence at the presidential level, probably at the gubernatorial level. These other positions, every party has got, or rather most of the constituent parties of NASA have got their own candidates. ODM has been dominating the whole thing. Actually, I have had enough complaints from the Wiper and the ANC candidates in Nairobi. Whenever Baba goes to a function in Nairobi, Raila goes to a function in Nairobi, and he urges them, his supporters to vote 6-piece. And by that, he means that it should be ODM from the presidency to the MCA. When he's saying that, among the people in that entourage are ANC candidates, they are Wiper candidates. I think that this sibling rivalry within NASA is going to cost them a lot. One thing I can assure you is that it is going to cost them a majority in the county assembly, which they, in the last election, they only had a majority of 1. Again, it is most likely going to also cost them the number of National Assembly seats that they might get. And then there is a very big risk of losing the women rep position to Jubilee, because Jubilee is going as an intact team, and the senator. Why am I saying this? Because Wiper has got a women rep candidate, just like ODM has. They've got, Wiper has got a senator as a candidate, just like ODM has. And then at the gubernatorial, there is something very tricky that is happening, and they know that. Because in the last election, when it came to the position of the senator, the senator for ODM had Bishop Margaret Wanjiru as the candidate for Senate in the last election. TNA had Sonko. And something very strange happened that can be confirmed by figures. The Wiper lot in CORD voted for Sonko as the TNA candidate. The truth of the matter is this, and if you go to the ground, those sentiments are going to be confirmed. That because especially of the sibling rivalry that is going on in these other positions, Wiper is feeling that the only place they are going to get back to ODM, because of the domination and the unfair competition they are experiencing, will be at the gubernatorial position. Why am I saying that? Because the Wiper subscribers have one of the year own, if I may say that, in quotes, as the Jubilee candidate for governor. So the same pattern that was experienced in the last election, where ODM voted for their Senate candidate, is most likely. And you can go around and get this. That is why, for the first time, there has been NASA meetings targeting the Kamba population. There was one at the City Stadium, and there is another one that is being planned. It is the first time they are doing that because of the worry that the Wiper vote will go with the Jubilee gubernatorial candidate. And like I'm saying, it happened in the last election, so it doesn't matter how strongly you feel it is not going to happen. Figures proved that they did that almost to a person. The difference between the Jubilee presidential candidate, just for your information, the difference between the Jubilee presidential candidate and the TNA candidate in the last election was 159,000. As in 159,000 code voters voted for the TNA senatorial candidate, but not for the presidential.
I think, let me tell you, I disagree with that totally. I mean, you look at 2013, the candidate you're talking about, Senator Mike Mbuvi Sonko, was vying for a senatorial position. And then you're bringing in elements of tribal politics, which again, they mattered back then more than now. Because what happened is ODM, which is associated with a certain ethnic group, had a Kikuyu candidate. So to the extent that ODM had Bishop Margaret Wanjiru, meant that, you know, Kikuyus had two things. They had it did because there were two things. The Kikuyu political party then, TNA, had a Kamba candidate. Then there was no other Kamba candidate who was vying on the senatorial ticket for the senatorial position. The person who was vying on an ODM ticket was not endearing herself to the ODM population. And the Sonko that we had then was a real Sonko, a Sonko of the people on the ground. Now, these guys were looking for a representative. The ball game is different this time around. This is a gubernatorial position. A governor is not a representative. He is not going to sort people. He is going to a political position.
So we are not going to see what we saw in 2013. We are not going to see what he saw in 2013. All right, we'll end it at that. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for
it's going to be repeated. You can take that to the bank.
We will have this conversation after August 8th.
I'm in touch with that kind of electorate more than him for obvious reasons.
We'll definitely have that conversation after the elections and see whether the ball game really was different or people will vote like they voted in 2013. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming in. Dismas Mukua, political risk analyst, Mitinda Kavemba, Jubilee strategist, as well as political analyst, and finally Hasbon Owila, communication expert and political analyst. Many thanks for joining us here on a Sunday edition. Next Sunday, over and over again, as we analyze the political situation in the country, the biggest stories. Remember, Yusuf Ibrahim comes in at 2 p.m. with a campaign edition, looking at where all these campaigns will be going down. NATSA is expected in Homa Bay, in Nyamira precisely, and Jubilee will be in Mombasa. Yusuf Ibrahim will be taking you through that. Many thanks for joining us. My name is Akisa Wandera. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.